The late summer sun melted across the plains in long strokes of gold, warming the tall grass until it shimmered like a restless sea. Wyatt Hollis rode the fence line at an easy pace, his old bay mare plodding forward with the slow rhythm of routine. He'd done this same ride nearly every evening for years, checking posts, tightening loose wire, making sure nothing had wandered off. The kind of work a man could do with his eyes half closed and his mind somewhere far away. And most days it was. At 43, Wyatt had mastered the art of quiet living. Too quiet, some might say. His ranch was one of the largest in 3 counties, handed down from a father who'd been stern and a mother who'd been soft-spoken. Both were gone now, their absence hanging in the house like a forgotten coat on a chair. He didn't mind solitude, not really. But some nights, when the wind howled across the empty fields, he caught himself wishing for footsteps that weren't his own. That was why he saw her before he truly understood what he was looking at. A shape, no, a presence near the north pasture. Standing so still she almost blended into the fading light. Wyatt squinted, nudged his horse closer. Maybe a traveler. Maybe one of the ranch hands who quit years ago. But no, this figure was taller. Much taller. And broader. And absolutely unmistakably a woman. His breath snagged in his throat. She wasn't just tall. She was towering. A cowgirl built like a monument, nearly 7 feet, maybe more, with shoulders broad enough to cast their own shadow. Long legs braced firmly in the dust, hips curved and powerful beneath the drape of her coat. The sun hit her braids, thick, ropes of golden brown, hair that ran all the way down her back, and they gleamed like strands of copper. Her hat tilted low, shadowing her eyes, but not enough to hide the spark in them as she watched him approach. Wyatt's jaw loosened. His reins nearly slipped from sweaty fingers. He tried speaking, failed. Her lips tugged into a smirk that made his stomach flip. "You about done staring, cowboy?" she called out, voice deep and confident. Wyatt straightened in the saddle as though someone had fired a pistol behind him. "Ma'am, sorry, I wasn't—" "Oh, hush," she said, stepping closer. The ground seemed to shift beneath her weight, not hard, just noticeable. Like nature made room for her. Men stare. "Ain't nothing new," Wyatt's mare snorted skittishly. He didn't blame her. The woman was as unexpected as a lightning strike. Wyatt cleared his throat, trying desperately to gather the pieces of himself. "I just wasn't expecting company," he managed, voice embarrassingly unsteady. She chuckled. It was warm, rich, and carried a note of mischief. "Name's Clara Vale." Then she tipped her chin at him. "And you're Wyatt Hollis, the lonely rancher all the folks whisper about." Wyatt nearly toppled off his horse. "They said what?" "Oh, you heard me." She crossed her massive arms, the muscles beneath her, sleeves shifting with quiet strength. "Said you worked this place alone for too long. Said you ain't had a partner in ages. Said you needed someone, strong." Her gaze trailed from his boots to his shoulders, then lingered. Someone who could keep up. His throat went dry. No one had looked at him like that in years, like he was a man worth noticing. She took another step closer, and suddenly she was right there at the stirrup, her face nearly level with his despite him being on horseback. Wyatt swallowed, acutely aware of how small he appeared next to her, how tiny his hand looked gripping the reins. He couldn't stop staring. He tried, but his gaze kept drifting over her size, her presence, the confidence that radiated off her in steady waves. That's when she said it. Soft, teasing, dangerous in a way that made something inside him spark awake. "Stop staring. If you want to, touch it." Wyatt's heart slammed straight against his ribs. Touch? Touch what?" Her eyebrow lifted, amusement shining in her eyes. "My hand, cowboy." She extended it toward him. Palm up, large, calloused, powerful, beautiful in its own rough way. "You're looking at me like you ain't never seen a woman built for real work." Wyatt stared at her hand. It was big enough that his fingers would barely span from one side to the other. The idea of holding it felt impossible, intimate, terrifying. She laughed again, softer this time. "I ain't gonna break you." His breath shook as he reached out. His hand trembled violently, and he cursed himself for it, but Clara didn't laugh, didn't mock, didn't pull away. She simply waited, still and steady as a mountain. Finally, his fingers brushed her palm, warm, solid, alive. Clara's hand closed around his gently, her grip careful, as though she already understood he needed softness more than strength. A small sound escaped him, half sigh, half relief. He hadn't realized how long it had been since someone touched him. Since someone wanted to. Clara stepped even closer, her free hand resting lightly on his horse's neck to keep the skittish mare calm. You feeling all right? She asked softly. Wyatt nodded, though he wasn't sure it was true. He felt dizzy, overwhelmed, strangely weightless, as though something heavy he'd been carrying for years was slipping off his shoulders. You came all the way out here, he murmured. Why? She tilted her head. To see you. He blinked. Me? Yes, you. Her thumb brushed his knuckles, slow and reassuring. Heard you were a good man. Heard you needed someone strong. She smiled, not teasing this time, but warm. Figured I'd ride out and see if the rumors were true. Wyatt didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to think. All he knew was her hand held his like it belonged there. And somehow it didn't scare him. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a rancher, not as a lonely man, but as someone worth walking toward. Clara squeezed his hand gently. Wyatt squeezed back, his heart thundering in a way it hadn't in decades. And as the sun dropped behind the horizon, the lonely rancher held the giant cowgirl's hand, wondering if fate had finally decided to give him something more than empty fields and quiet nights. Back the evening had settled into that quiet blue hour where the world felt softer, gentler, where even a man who'd forgotten what companionship felt like could believe something new was possible. Wyatt led Clara back toward the ranch house, riding slowly so she could walk beside him. Though truth be told, she didn't need help keeping up. Her strides were long and unhurried, her presence steady enough that Wyatt found himself glancing over at her every few seconds, just to confirm she was real. She walked with her hat pushed back a little, revealing more of her face. There was a calmness there, a quiet kind that felt familiar to him, like she belonged in the open land, just as much as the hills and the wind did. Big ranch you've got, she said, sweeping her gaze over the spread of fields, reaching all the way to the distant tree line. Too big for one man, Wyatt replied before he could stop himself. Clara's eyes flickered toward him, not pitying but recognizing something. Maybe loneliness, maybe exhaustion, maybe the simple truth of someone who'd been carrying weight alone for too long. When they reached the yard, Wyatt swung off his horse. His boots hit the dirt with a familiarity that grounded him. Clara stopped beside him, and for the first time, he realized just how tall she really was. On horseback he had forgotten, but now standing eye level with her collarbone, he felt something strange coil in his chest, not intimidation, not fear. Something warmer, something he didn't have a name for. You built all this yourself? She asked, nodding toward the barn, the porch, the tools lined neatly along the shed wall. Most of it, Wyatt said, rubbing the back of his neck. My dad helped with some parts, and ranch hands before the drought hit. You're strong, she said simply. Wyatt blinked. The words struck him harder than they should have. No one had called him that in years, not since he'd been young, not since people used to look at him with expectation instead of quiet sympathy. He cleared his throat, suddenly too aware of her gaze. I manage. You do more than manage. Clara stepped closer, her boots crunching softly in the dirt. Takes a hell of a man to hold all this together alone. Wyatt didn't know how to handle praise, especially from someone who looked carved out of strength itself. He looked down, embarrassed, but Clara didn't let the moment slip away. She reached out slowly, giving him every chance to move, but he didn't. Her giant hand landed on his shoulder, gentle, warm, steady as bedrock. He stiffened, then relaxed, breath leaving him in a long, shaky exhale. You all right? She murmured. Yesy, he managed, though his voice cracked. Just not used to folks being this close. Clara's thumb brushed his shoulder, a tiny gesture, but one that sent heat right through him. I can give you space. He shook his head. Don't want space. Her smile widened, softening her whole face. The moon had begun to rise behind her, silvering the edges of her silhouette. Wyatt had never seen anything or anyone quite like her. So, Clara said, folding her arms, you gonna keep stumbling over your words all night? Or you finally gonna look me proper? I'm looking, Wyatt murmured, eyes tracing up her frame. She clicked her tongue. You're admiring from far away. That ain't the same. He lifted his head slowly, meeting her gaze. She waited patiently, giving him time. He let himself take her in, the strength, the size, the quiet confidence in her stance. For the first time, he didn't look away. There, she whispered. That's better. Wyatt felt something tighten in his chest. Clara, why'd you really come out here? She looked past him at the ranch stretching into the night, then back at him. Her voice softened. I wanted a place I didn't have to shrink for. A place where big is useful, not strange. A place where a woman like me ain't a burden. Wyatt's heart twisted. Whoever told you were a burden was a damn fool. Clara blinked at him, slowly, as though the words were something she wasn't used to hearing. You really think that? She asked. I know it, he said with more confidence than he felt. Anyone can see you ain't made for small things. Clara stepped even closer until he could feel her warmth, until the shadow of her body fell over him like shelter. Her voice dropped low. And what about you, Wyatt? You think a woman my size is too much? He swallowed, hard. I think you take my breath away. She inhaled sharply, just a tiny sound, but enough for him to feel his pulse kick up. Well, she whispered, you take mine too. Silence fell between them, not awkward, not tense, but heavy with something blooming, something neither of them seemed ready to name. Then Clara reached for his hand again. This time she didn't offer it palm up. She simply took his hand in hers, slow and deliberate, letting him feel every inch of her strength and every ounce of her restraint. Her fingers wrapped around his carefully, like she was afraid of squeezing too tight. Wyatt let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Clara lifted their joined hands and placed his palm against her shoulder. Her skin was warm beneath the fabric, her muscle firm and alive under his fingers. You see? She murmured. If you want to touch, you don't gotta be afraid. Just be gentle. Wyatt felt her shiver under his hand, just barely, but enough to make his heartbeat stumble. You treat me careful, she whispered. Most folks don't. Because you deserve careful, he said, voice barely above a breath. Her eyes softened. Then I reckon I'm in the right place. They stood there, hand in hand, the moon lifting higher, silvering the fields and the porch and the two figures holding onto something neither dared name. Clara leaned her forehead down toward him, brushing lightly against his hair, letting him feel her closeness without overwhelming him. Wyatt's voice trembled as he asked, Clara, are you staying? She paused, searching his eyes. Do you want me to? He swallowed. More than I've wanted anything in a long time. Clara's lips curved into a slow, brilliant smile, one that held relief, hope in something deeper. Then I'm staying. She wrapped an arm around him, carefully, gently, like cradling something precious, and Wyatt leaned into her, letting the warmth of her strength fill the empty spaces he'd carried for years. And under that rising moon, for the first time in a very long time, Wyatt Hollis didn't feel alone.